October 1983 in Mendocino County arrives with the kind of quiet that makes you notice everything. The way pine needles whisper against each other in the wind, how the Pacific fog rolls inland like slow breath, the particular orange of afternoon light filtering through redwood canopy. Laura Chen, 24 years old, shoulders her pack at the Elk Ridge trailhead, adjusting the straps until the weight settles evenly across her hips. The pack itself is unmistakable, bright orange nylon, chosen specifically so her mother would stop worrying about visibility. A compass dangles from a carabiner on the left shoulder strap, catching sunlight as she signs the trail register with careful handwriting, noting her planned route and expected return Sunday evening. She's wearing practical hiking boots, a navy fleece, and carries a 35mm camera her father gave her for her birthday 3 months earlier. The trailhead parking area holds only 2 other vehicles this late in the season, and the ranger who checks permits remembers her smile, the way she asked about creek crossings and whether the bridge near Point 7 Creek was still passable after the September storms. She steps into the forest with the confidence of someone who has walked these trails before, though never alone. The path climbs gradually through Douglas fir and tannoak, the air smelling of damp earth and decomposing leaves. Her plan is simple: 12 miles to a backcountry campsite she visited with friends the previous summer, 2 nights under stars, photographs of autumn color and solitude to think about the graduate school applications waiting on her desk at home. Her mother, who keeps a calendar on the refrigerator marked with everyone's schedules in different colored pens, has Sunday's square circled in blue with Laura Returns written in her precise script. If you're watching this story unfold from somewhere in the world right now, take a moment to subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. These stories connect us across distances in ways that matter. By nightfall Sunday, that circled square will become the first of thousands of days, marked not with plans, but with absence, and the orange pack will enter a different kind of record entirely. The forest accepts her into its shadows, and for hours everything proceeds exactly as planned. Steady footfalls on packed earth, the weight of the pack becoming familiar, the pleasant burn in her calves as elevation gains. She photographs a particular stand of old-growth redwoods near mile marker 6, the camera's shutter clicking in the cathedral silence. The disappearance announces itself not with drama, but with wrongness, the specific wrongness of a car sitting alone in a trailhead parking lot when it shouldn't be, of headlights cutting through Monday morning fog to illuminate a windshield beaded with dew. The ranger who finds Laura's Honda Civic at 7:43 a.m. recognizes it from Friday's permit check. He tries the doors, finds them locked, peers through windows at a neat interior, sunglasses in the cup holder, a sweatshirt folded on the passenger seat, nothing disturbed. Protocol requires waiting, but something in the stillness makes him radio dispatch immediately. By noon, the Mendocino County Sheriff's Department has contacted Laura's emergency contact, her mother, who answers the phone in her classroom during lunch break and feels the floor tilt beneath her feet. Laura was expected home Sunday evening. She called Friday night from a payphone in town, cheerful, confirming she'd see them soon. The weather had been clear all weekend. There's no reason for delay, no explanation that makes sense. Her father drives to the trailhead that afternoon as if his presence might somehow manifest his daughter, as if the force of parental need could pull her from wherever she's gone. Search and rescue mobilizes with the efficiency of teams who know how quickly wilderness swallows people. By Tuesday morning, 40 volunteers spread through the Elk Ridge trail system, calling Laura's name until their voices go hoarse. Bloodhounds brought from the state facility in Eureka pick up her scent from a shirt provided by her family, tracking it along the main trail for roughly 4 miles before losing it entirely near a washed-out section where a seasonal creek has undermined the path. The dogs circle, whine, sit, the universal signal of scent interruption. A deputy marks the location with flagging tape while overhead, a Coast Guard helicopter borrowed for the effort traces grids through the canopy. The search area expands to include ravines and off-trail zones where someone injured or disoriented might wander. Divers check deeper pools in the creek systems. Rock climbers rappel cliff faces. On day 5, a hiker reports finding a blue bandana snagged on manzanita branches a mile east of the main trail. And for 6 hours, Hope focuses laser-tight on that sector until Laura's mother quietly identifies the bandana as not her daughter's. Wrong shade, wrong fabric, probably years old. The false lead costs precious time and emotional energy, leaving the family oscillating between desperate hope and crushing disappointment. The search continues for 2 weeks before transitioning to what officials carefully term limited and continuous status. Laura's parents move into a motel 30 miles from the trailhead, transforming the small room into a command center plastered with maps and timelines. Every surface in 3 counties soon carries flyers featuring her hiking permit photo. Smiling, sun in her eyes, the orange pack visible over one shoulder. Her father, a structural engineer who solves problems through systematic analysis, creates spreadsheets tracking every tip, every supposed sighting, cross-referencing dates and locations and weather patterns with the methodical precision of someone who believes answers exist if you organize the data correctly. Her mother, a high school English teacher who believes in the power of words, writes letters to television stations, newspapers, missing persons organizations, never quite finding the right combination of syllables to make the world care enough. The local news covers the story for 3 days before moving on. National outlets never pick it up. She's one of dozens who vanish in wilderness areas each year, and without evidence of foul play or a particularly dramatic narrative hook, the media carousel turns elsewhere. Thanksgiving arrives with search teams suspended due to early snow. Christmas sees a false identification in Oregon. A ranger spots someone matching Laura's description at a different trailhead. But the woman turns out to be a graduate student from Portland with her own family waiting and her own life fully intact. New Year's Eve finds Laura's parents sitting in the kitchen they renovated together 5 years earlier, unable to find words that bridge the chasm opening between them. Her father drinks scotch and recalculates search probabilities based on terrain and seasonal weather patterns. Her mother writes in a journal she started keeping, addressing entries to Laura as if her daughter might someday read them and understand the particular mathematics of waiting. The orange pack enters evidence logs as missing personal effect, high value for identification purposes. The compass, the camera, the map, creased at Point 7 Creek, all gone with her into whatever silence claimed her that October weekend. By spring, the official search has concluded, though volunteers continue periodic sweeps. The trail reopens to regular use, and hikers pass through the area where Laura was last traced, unaware they're walking through the geography of someone's worst nightmare. Years accumulate like sediment, each one adding weight to the question that has no answer. Laura's case file thickens with periodic reviews, interdepartmental memos, updated age progression photographs that show what she might look like at 30, 35, 40, the computer algorithms adding wrinkles and weight and the accumulated wear of years she may or may not have lived. Forensic protocols evolve around her absence, DNA databases expand, missing persons networks digitize, satellite imagery becomes routine for search operations. In 1997, when California implements missing persons DNA collection, Laura's parents provide samples that enter CODIS, the combined DNA index system that cross-references biological evidence from unidentified remains, crime scenes, and voluntary submissions nationwide. The process takes 15 minutes, a cheek swab and paperwork, but the implications stretch across decades. Somewhere in the system, their genetic information waits in digital suspension, ready to ping against any match that might surface. Twice, Remains discovered in remote Mendocino locations prompt agonizing waits for identification. And twice the calls come back negative, leaving the family suspended again in the particular limbo of ambiguous loss. Her mother continues teaching, grading papers at the kitchen table where Laura's high school graduation photo holds permanent position next to the calendar that stopped meaning anything in October 1983. She develops small rituals, lighting a candle on Laura's birthday, visiting the trailhead on the anniversary of her disappearance, maintaining her daughter's bedroom exactly as it was, which her grief counselor gently suggests might not be healthy, but which feels like the only form of faithfulness available. Her father accepts consulting work that keeps him traveling, unable to sit still in the house where her childhood bedroom remains a museum to a life interrupted at 24. They attend support groups for families of the missing, learning the particular grammar of ambiguous loss, how to hold space for someone neither fully present nor confirmed gone, how hope calcifies into something harder and more painful than grief. Other families in the group eventually receive closure, their loved ones found or identified or confirmed deceased. And while those outcomes bring their own anguish, at least they provide an ending. Laura's parents remain in permanent suspension, unable to grieve completely because grief requires acknowledgement of death, unable to hope freely because hope requires some foundation beyond sheer will. The procedural machinery grinds slowly, but never entirely stops. In 2003, a cold case detective reviews the file as part of a systematic audit, notes the proximity to several unsolved assault cases from the same era, requests soil analysis from the scent loss location in case accelerant or other chemicals might explain the dog's confusion. The analysis comes back negative, nothing but organic matter and mineral sediment, no chemical signatures that would account for the dog's behavior. In 2011, the case receives digital archiving, old paper files scanned into searchable databases, witness statements from 1983 preserved in audio files, tagged with metadata that makes them searchable by keyword and date. Each technological advancement offers brief resurrection of possibility, then settles back into the vast catalogue of unresolved disappearances that haunt wilderness jurisdictions nationwide. The detective assigned to cold cases in 2018 spends a week reviewing Laura's file, cross-referencing it against new databases that track patterns in missing persons cases, looking for connections that earlier investigators might have missed. He finds nothing definitive, but adds his notes to the file, maintaining the chain of attention that keeps a case technically active, even when leads have long since exhausted themselves. The file might have remained there indefinitely, one among thousands gathering digital dust, except for mud and time and the way water moves through landscapes over decades. March 2024 arrives in Mendocino County with atmospheric rivers that meteorologists track with alarm. Storm after storm stacking up over the Pacific, each one dumping inches of rain on already saturated soil. The Russian River floods. Highways wash out. Emergency services respond to landslides and structure damage across the county. The Elk Ridge Trail system, closed for safety during the worst of the weather, takes on more water than the watershed has seen since the El Niño years of the 90s. Seasonal creeks become torrents, hillsides slump, debris flows carve new channels through the forest. When the storms finally exhaust themselves in late March, rangers survey the damage and begin planning trail repairs and reroutes around the most severely impacted areas. The landscape has been subtly rearranged. New sandbars deposited in creek bends, exposed bedrock where topsoil has scoured away, root systems of ancient trees suddenly visible where banks have collapsed. The forest will recover, as it always does, but the recovery will reveal things buried and forgotten. On April 3, 2024, a hiker named Marcus Webb navigates the Elk Ridge Trail system for the first time, following recent trail maintenance that has rerouted certain sections away from erosion zones. He's a landscape photographer from Sacramento who makes regular pilgrimages to the North Coast for its particular quality of light and dramatic topography. The post-storm landscape offers exactly the kind of raw beauty he's seeking: waterfalls swollen to spectacular volume, hillsides stripped to elemental geology, the forest showing its bones. He's watching his footing on a muddy descent, camera bag secure across his chest, when his boot catches on something rigid beneath the silt. He assumes root or rock, adjusts his path to step around whatever obstruction has snagged him, but peripheral vision catches a glimpse of color that doesn't belong. A strip of fabric, maybe orange, artificial against the browns and greens of decomposing organic matter. Curiosity makes him crouch, and he uses a stick to carefully clear mud from around the object, expecting to find someone's lost jacket or a piece of camping gear abandoned by careless backpackers. Within minutes, he's staring at what is unmistakably a backpack frame, partially embedded in what was, until the recent storms, streambank sediment, now slumped and exposed. Marcus has enough wilderness experience to recognize that people lose gear all the time, that finding a pack doesn't necessarily mean anything sinister has occurred. But the depth of burial and the location, approximately 50 feet off the current trail alignment, in a drainage that clearly experiences seasonal flooding, trigger some instinct for documentation over disturbance. He photographs the scene from multiple angles, without touching anything beyond his initial clearing of surface mud, notes GPS coordinates on his phone, and marks the location with a cairn of distinctive stones so he can guide others back if needed. He debates hiking out immediately versus continuing his planned photography route, ultimately deciding that whatever this is, it has waited this long and can wait another few hours. By late afternoon, he's back at the trailhead with cellular service, where he contacts the ranger station with the kind of calm, detailed report that makes the difference in evidence preservation. The ranger who takes his call asks specific questions about the location and condition of the pack, and something in the conversation's tone shifts when Marcus describes the orange color and approximate age suggested by the fabric's degradation. By evening, the same sheriff's department that searched these woods in 1983 has cordoned the area and begun careful excavation. The cold case detective who reviewed Laura's file in 2018 arrives at the site after hours of driving, having been contacted by a colleague who remembered his interest in the case. A forensic team equipped with proper archaeological techniques begins the slow process of exposure, photographing at every stage, documenting soil layers, treating the site as they would any potential crime scene despite the lack of human remains. The pack emerges slowly over the course of 3 hours, lifted from silt that has held it in essentially anaerobic conditions, fabric faded but structurally intact, zippers corroded but still closed, contents protected by the very mud that concealed them for 41 years. The orange nylon, once bright as a safety beacon, has mellowed to rust brown, and the frame shows the kind of corrosion you'd expect from decades of seasonal water exposure. But on the inner flap, revealed when the pack is finally freed and carefully opened on a tarp spread beside the excavation site, forensics discovers writing in permanent marker, faded but legible under proper lighting, initials that stop everyone's breathing: LC. Inside, wrapped in multiple layers of plastic bags that someone took care to seal, Laura herself, preparing for weather. Forensics discovers a 35mm camera with undeveloped film still in the chamber, the body corroded, but the film canister intact and sealed. They find the compass, its needle frozen by corrosion, but the engraving on the back clear enough to read under magnification. To Laura, find your way, Dad. They find the map, exactly where the synopsis of her disappearance noted it would be, creased at Point 7 Creek, with pencil marks indicating her planned route. A water bottle, empty, the plastic degraded to brittleness. A first aid kit still sealed in its original packaging. A paperback novel with pages swollen by moisture but text still readable. And most significantly, a spiral-bound notebook with entries dated October 7th through October 9th, 1983. Laura's handwriting, documenting her solo journey with the kind of observational detail that makes her immediate and alive on the page, 41 years after she wrote the words. The discovery protocol requires careful chain of custody, each item photographed in place, then removed and sealed in evidence bags, then transported to the county forensic facility for detailed examination. The pack itself undergoes DNA testing, and within 48 hours, the results confirm what everyone already suspects. Biological material on the straps and interior surfaces matches the reference samples Laura's parents provided to CODIS decades earlier. The confirmation transforms a found object into evidence in an active investigation, and the case that has been officially cold since the late 80s suddenly has resources and attention focused on it again. But the real revelation lies in what the pack contains beyond mere confirmation of ownership. It lies in the undeveloped film, which forensic photographers handle with the delicacy reserved for irreplaceable historical artifacts. The film is sent to a specialized laboratory in Los Angeles that works with archives and museums on aging photographic materials. Using techniques developed for recovering images from damaged negatives, they process the film in a controlled environment over the course of 2 weeks. The images that emerge are grainy, color-shifted by chemical degradation, but unmistakable in their content. Laura photographed her journey systematically: the trailhead at departure, landscape views along the route, a self-portrait taken with a timer showing her smiling at her campsite, the orange pack propped against a tree behind her. Frame 12 shows a clearing with 2 tents, one clearly Laura's based on the color and size, and one that shouldn't be there according to any official record of the trail's use that weekend. Frame 13 shows a campfire with 2 sets of boots visible at the edge of the frame. Frame 14 is blurred, possibly taken in haste or low light, but appears to show figures in motion. Frame 15 is the last exposure on the roll, a shot angled upward into tree canopy, unfocused, as if the camera was dropped or thrown. The photographs don't provide answers so much as they reframe the questions. Laura wasn't alone in her final documented hours. But who was with her, and what happened in the time between frame 15 and the moment her pack entered the mud that would hold it for 41 years? The rediscovery reignites the cold file with urgency that feels almost aggressive after decades of dormancy. Detectives pull the original case files, now digitized, and begin the painstaking work of cross-referencing every reported missing person from Mendocino County and surrounding jurisdictions in the fall of 1983. They discover what the initial investigation missed or couldn't have connected with pre-digital resources. A second hiker reported missing from a different trailhead approximately 20 miles away, same weekend, a 32-year-old man named David Reeves from Ukiah. His disappearance received minimal attention at the time because he was known to take extended solo trips without notifying family, and when he didn't return by his expected date, his sister waited a week before reporting him missing, assuming he'd simply extended his journey. By the time she filed the report, search resources were already committed to looking for Laura, and David's case was treated as a lower priority. Adult male, experienced hiker, history of going off-grid. The file was eventually marked inactive when no evidence of distress surfaced. Detectives contact David's sister, now 68 years old and living in Santa Rosa, to inquire about any personal effects that might have survived. She's stunned to receive the call, having long ago accepted her brother's disappearance as one of life's permanent mysteries, the kind of loss you learn to carry rather than resolve. She still has a box of his belongings in her garage. Camping gear she couldn't bring herself to donate, photographs, a journal he kept sporadically. She drives to the sheriff's department the next day with the box, and detectives photograph everything, looking for connections to Laura's case. In David's journal, they find an entry dated October 5th, 1983, mentioning his plan to hike the Elk Ridge system and scout potential camping locations for a longer trip he was planning with friends the following spring. The entry notes his intention to camp near Point 7 Creek, exactly where Laura's map was creased, exactly where the forensic analysis suggests the photographs were taken. The convergence of evidence is circumstantial but compelling. Two hikers, missing the same weekend, both planning to camp in the same remote area, photographic evidence suggesting they encountered each other. But what happened after that encounter remains opaque. Forensic teams return to the site where Marcus found the pack and expand the search radius systematically, using ground-penetrating radar and cadaver dogs to survey the surrounding terrain. On April 23rd, 3 weeks after the pack's discovery, searchers locate a depression approximately 100 yards upstream from the original site, partially obscured by decades of vegetation growth and sediment deposition. Careful excavation reveals human remains in a shallow grave, along with artifacts that include a corroded belt buckle, boot eyelets, and fragments of fabric consistent with 80s-era hiking gear. Dental records confirm the remains are David Reeves. Forensic analysis suggests blunt force trauma to the skull, though the exact cause of death is complicated by decomposition and environmental factors. The discovery of David's remains forces investigators to reconstruct possible scenarios from fragmentary evidence and educated inference. The most likely explanation, supported by the physical evidence and timeline, suggests Laura and David encountered each other at the Point 7 Creek area, possibly sharing a campsite or camping in proximity. Something went wrong. An accident, a confrontation, circumstances that remain ultimately unknowable, and David sustained fatal injuries. What happened to Laura after that moment is the question that consumes the investigation's final phase. Did she flee? Was she injured? Did exposure or disorientation in unfamiliar terrain lead to her death in a location that hasn't yet been found? The pack's location, downstream from the gravesite, suggests it was carried by water during a flooding event, possibly the same storms that washed out the bridge in October 1983 or in subsequent years, before eventually becoming embedded in the sediment that held it until the 2024 storms exposed it again. The case consumes regional media attention for weeks, and national outlets finally pick up the story that they ignored 41 years earlier: the angle of the buried pack, the undeveloped photos, the second body, all combining into the kind of narrative that drives engagement and speculation. Laura's parents, now in their late 70s, navigate the media circus with the weary dignity of people who have lived with tragedy so long it has become part of their identity. Her mother travels to the Mendocino County Sheriff's Department to view the recovered items: the compass her husband gave their daughter, the notebook with Laura's handwriting preserved under evidence seal, the photographs that show their daughter alive and smiling hours before whatever happened next. She's offered the opportunity to keep some items once the investigation concludes, and she requests only the notebook, wanting to read her daughter's final thoughts written in her own hand. Her father, whose health has declined significantly in recent years, struggles to process the mixed emotions of finally having answers while simultaneously having those answers open new wounds. Knowing his daughter encountered someone in those woods, knowing something went wrong, but never knowing the precise sequence of events that led to 41 years of searching. The investigation concludes without charges. There's no suspect to prosecute, no clear evidence of crime beyond the probable homicide of David Reeves, and even that carries ambiguity about whether it resulted from accident, self-defense, or deliberate violence. The Sheriff's Department issues a report summarizing findings and acknowledging the limitations of reconstructing events from such degraded evidence after more than 4 decades. What the case does provide is administrative closure. Laura Chen is officially removed from the missing persons database and her status updated to deceased, though her remains have not been located. The removal feels both necessary and violent. Her mother later tells a support group counselor, like losing her daughter a second time. David Reeves receives similar reclassification, and his remains are released to his sister for burial. She holds a small service at a cemetery in Ukiah, finally able to mark a grave after 41 years of not knowing where to direct her grief. The aftermath extends beyond individual families into systematic change. The case becomes a catalyst for reform in how California manages wilderness missing persons investigations, particularly the intersection of multiple jurisdictions and the limitations of search resources when cases occur simultaneously. The Mendocino County Sheriff's Department, in consultation with search and rescue organizations statewide, develops new protocols for evidence preservation in wilderness areas, including environmental considerations for long-term recovery scenarios. The undeveloped film's survival and eventual processing leads to recommendations that missing persons cases involving cameras or electronic devices include specific forensic attention to potential data recovery even decades after initial investigation. A foundation is established in Laura's name to fund topographic forensic mapping of high-risk wilderness areas using LiDAR and other remote sensing technologies to create detailed models that can assist in locating remains and evidence missed by traditional search methods. In June 2024, Laura's family returns to the Elk Ridge Trail for a private ceremony organized with the cooperation of park authorities. They hike to the area where the pack was found, her mother carrying flowers wrapped in paper, her father moving slowly with a cane that wasn't necessary when this nightmare began. They're accompanied by a ranger who helped with the original search in 1983 and who volunteered to guide them now, closing a circle that has shaped his career in ways he never anticipated. At a quiet bend in the trail, where water moves over stones and redwoods filter light into green-gold columns, they scatter wildflowers native to the region, lupine, poppy, columbine, and stand in silence that holds 41 years of questions finally released into the forest that kept their partial answers so long. Her mother places the compass on a flat stone near the water's edge, wanting to leave something of Laura in the place she last walked, but the ranger gently suggests that it might be better to keep it, that some things should return home. She nods, understanding, and slips the compass back into her pocket where it rests against her heart. The case file officially closes in August 2024, but its implications ripple forward through policy and practice. The California Department of Justice updates its Missing Persons Handbook to include long-term environmental recovery as a distinct category requiring specialized resources and expertise. National Park Service protocols for search operations incorporate lessons from Laura's case about how terrain and water move evidence over time, how what seems thoroughly searched in one decade might yield findings in another after environmental changes reveal what was hidden. The story becomes part of training materials for new search and rescue personnel, a reminder that closure sometimes arrives not through breakthrough investigation, but through patient attention and the slow revelation of landscapes that hold secrets longer than human lifespans. Laura's mother continues teaching for 2 more years before retiring, and in her final semester, she assigns her senior English class a unit on unfinished narratives and ambiguous endings, using her daughter's story as framework for discussing how we make meaning from incompleteness. Her students, born decades after Laura disappeared, engage with the material in ways that surprise her. They understand intuitively what her generation had to learn through experience, that not every story resolves cleanly, that sometimes the ending isn't about answers, but about how we continue living with questions. On her last day of teaching, a student stays after class to ask if she's okay, if telling Laura's story is too painful. She considers the question carefully before answering that pain is unavoidable, but silence would be worse, that speaking her daughter's name and sharing her story is the only form of presence still available. The orange pack, carefully preserved as evidence even after the case closes, eventually transfers to the family, who donate it to a small museum dedicated to wilderness safety and missing persons awareness. It becomes part of an exhibit about long-term cases and the importance of persistent investigation, Laura's story told alongside dozens of others, her face smiling from the permit photo that has become her permanent record, Forever 24, forever about to step into trees that will teach hard lessons about how wilderness holds both beauty and danger in measures we can never fully predict or control.